Hello and welcome to Script and Pencils. This is season 3 of our comic creator interview show. I'm Paul from the Comic Crush. Today I'm joined by a fantastic artist from Northern Ireland, Mr. PJ Holden. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm grand.
It is great to have you on. I've seen a bit of your work over the last few years and always really enjoyed it. And the project we're going to talk about today, one of the many projects we're going to talk about today, is The Lion and the Eagle, which is your prestige sized or prestige plus size, as DC have now dubbed it.
Yeah, I mean it's a big book. It's interesting. The struggle I have is that I haven't actually got a copy yet, so I don't know how big it is. I don't know. I've been drawing it all digitally, so I don't know how big it is either.
Right.
And every time I say to someone it's oversized and it's 40 pages, I think they're going, 40 pages is oversized. And I'm going, no, I mean, it's like also bigger.
I can show you now.
40 pages is bigger. I go, no, but it's like bigger. I don't think you're getting it. It's bigger than, yes, 40 is bigger.
So this is The Lion and the Eagle. It's sort of the kind of bande dessinée size that a lot of
kind of it's like a record size, isn't it? Record shape.
Actually, yes, it is very much sort of vinyl sized. I actually really enjoy these bigger books, principally because they show off the art so much better. So I mean, just
I know a few comic shops hate them.
So, they are difficult
because
to wrap.
They're bigger. Yeah,
and then
I don't want that to be the elephant in the room that we're not going to talk about. I am aware that for a comic shop, these are a pain in the arse. I'm aware of it. I don't make these decisions. I just get asked, I want to draw the things, and it looks lovely.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think there might be some downsides audience-wise about them. And Liz and I sometimes talk about this. I tease Liz who's my sort of podcasting partner for the Comics Review Show, because although she loves the content, she hates the size, because she's like, I've got to store these now, and the bags, the boards, all that.
Do you know? And one advantage of them is I think they probably fit perfectly into a Kallax IKEA thing. So they're almost exactly the right dimensions for it. I think. I don't know. Just
It's good that we can plug IKEA's furniture. I mean, I have to see if I can get them to sponsor this one, PJ. But this book, The Lion and the Eagle, it's from Aftershock Comics, drawn fantastically by yourself, written by Mr. Garth Ennis, with colours by Matt Miller and letters by Rob Steen. Now, I'm right in saying that you guys have kind of all worked together previously, right? I mean, either all together or...
Yeah, well, I mean, Matt Miller, I'm not familiar with. This is the first I've worked with him, I think. And he's done. I mean, every time I draw a page, I think I really need to write an apology letter to the colorist, because this is impossible. You've seen the art. There's a lot of jungle in there. There's a lot of finicky detail. There's a lot of me going, is this zoom too high on this Cintiq that I've? Or no, it's fine. Everyone will be able to see this tiny thing, and so I feel quite sorry for the colorists. And it's a difficult job coloring this World War II stuff, because I'm digging up reference all the time, and you're always shot for the reference, because no matter how much reference you get, it's never enough. There's no way I can consume enough reference, and I am always starting from a standing start. I'm not none of the war books I've done. Yes, I've done war stuff in the past, but none of the war books are, in any way related to previous ones. So it's like suddenly it's, oh, well, you've done tanks, so now you're doing Chindits. Well, these guys are not the same. These are not the same uniforms. This is not the same period of war. This is not the same locations. It's not the same vehicles. All of this stuff is suddenly different. And you've got to then dig in and research this stuff. And there's a lot of things that you find online that is helpful, but at the same time not helpful, because you'll find hats, for example. Here's a great thing. So they were, as you've seen in the strip, they were these hats. There's kind of Australian hat originally, I think, and the British adopted them for jungle warfare, or the British took them for their troops in the jungle. And I think I think I get better with the hats as time goes on. Hats, horses, and bicycles are the natural enemy of the comic artist. Those are those are things, which is why you've never seen Hot Horse Bicycle Man. He, you know, it's not a character.
I was going to pitch that to you afterwards.
No, not a character anyone wants to draw. So you kind of find yourself drawing these things from pictures, from photographs that are perfect. And so you start drawing them like that. And then over time, you start finding other photographs where they're less than perfect. You think, well, that's a variation or something. And then eventually you find a video of people walking with these hats on, and they're like completely disheveled. And you realize that the fabric that they've got isn't maybe as stiff as you thought it was. And so there's all these little tiny things in there. And then even whenever you do, you like I'll buy books by the lorry load. In fact, this is my reference shelf over here. You just about see it there. That there is my World War II reference shelf. So everything World War II-ish is in there.
Straining.
And the thing is, like, I'll have books on uniforms and stuff, and they'll say, "Oh, this is the 1942 weapon, and here's photograph of it." But like, when I did a pilot a thing with World War II, Happy Valley, I think it was, with Garth, which was one of the first World War II things I did with him over 10 years ago now, I think. And I was drawing, you get your RAF World War II reference stuff, and you go, it's 1942, this story, so therefore it's this piece of equipment. And then you start drawing it, and then you get a bit of time, you start reading the books about the stuff, and you go, oh, it says here they used this, except sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they used earlier ones because that happened to be what was left. Sometimes pilots were killed so quickly that they never reused the older ones, so they only used the new ones, because when the pilot was lost, so was the goggles, so was all the equipment. So they replenished this stuff much faster than you think. And so it's and sometimes the months are like January to February to March to April. By April, they've got a different piece of equipment because they were manufacturing these things so quickly and so rapidly, and then altering them and changing them, and then by the time that month rolls around, you've got new equipment. So it's a nightmare. But the thing is, I think you've got to at some point go, right, I'm done with reference, and you got to start drawing the comic. And there's a great, I'm sure you've heard the Harrison Ford story before, where what do you call it? Mark Hamilton comes out of they're in the compressor bit of the Star Wars, and he comes out. He says, "Oh, for continuity, my hair should still be wet." And Harrison Ford goes, "Look, kid, if they're looking at your hair, we're in a whole shitload of trouble. This is not that kind of movie." And I think that's the thing you've got to bear in mind, is that you're, on the one hand, like the string bags, which Garth and I did previously, which was with Dead Reckoning. Sorry?
Was it TKO or?
No, it was with a company called Dead Reckoning.
Right, I'm sorry.
Graphic novelist publishers who were associated with the Naval Academy. So they primarily publish reference books, World War II reference books, and World War II fiction, and so on.
You asked for a discount as part payment.
Well, I mean, they're an American publisher, though, so all their books are in the States. So so that was a kind of, you have to think about your audience then, and it's like, well, that audience, are going to look at the equipment, they're going to look at the vehicles. So I'm just going to get a little, put a little bit more time in it, be a little less kind of laissez-faire with it. And then you still mess up, like that in that particular book, the three main characters, you're also, like, most of the time you're hampered because these characters are wearing goggles, they've got hats on, covering their head. So all you ever really see is their chin. Now, as you know, I'm a Judge Dredd artist, so I'm good with a chin. But even so, you're still left with a small amount of facial area to convince someone of who a character is. And so you kind of use all the cheats that you've got available to you. You give someone a dimple there on their chin. Okay, that distinguishes him from the other two. And then you want a character to look older, so you think, well, I'll give him a moustache. So I give one character a moustache. Two people criticized that book because the characters in the Naval Air Fleet, the pilots in the Naval Air Fleet, didn't have moustaches. It was specifically written in their legislation, in their bylaws or whatever. They weren't allowed to have moustaches, no facial hair, except maybe beards, but not moustaches. So you're looking at all these reference photos. I didn't notice no one had a mustache. I didn't
And
spot that. It didn't click. At no point did any of these photos go, by the way, notice none of these characters have mustaches.
yeah,
I was looking for the goggles, I was looking for the helmet. Yeah. So there's all, so you're always going to get something not right for someone who is an expert in this stuff. And you've got to just, you've got to be able to pull up your britches and your big boy pants and go, do you know what? We've got to go. There's got to be something wrong. We've got to go. I mean, I got like there was a film on Talking Pictures TV, which is a plug for a TV station that no one will watch, but it's a great little channel. It shows all these
it's
old
a great
films.
channel. Yeah.
It's a great channel. Run from someone's shed. Apparently, it started in someone's shed.
Yeah,
The guy
apparently
used to
so.
buy up old films. But anyway, it's great. And they showed a film called The Long and the Short and the Tall. And The Long, the Short and the Tall is about a jungle patrol in Burma. And so they've got because the first things I'm doing is I'm looking for books, like books with photos. A written book that's 700 pages is no use to me. I cannot read that because I just don't have time. And also I need the visual stuff. I need to see what these things look like. It's no use reading someone saying, "Oh, it took me 10 minutes to get the webbing on." Well, that's no use to me. What does it actually look like? What does that piece of equipment look like? But this film had them in their hats and the webbing and everything, and I'm looking at it and I'm going, "Oh, I've got that wrong. I've got that wrong. I've got that wrong." But this was made in, I think it was 65 or something. So they might have got stuff wrong.
Yeah.
I might be right and they might be wrong. But importantly, they had the hats on. I was like, "Oh, that's what that hat looks like that angle." Okay. So anyway. So yeah, I mean, I do. I mean, Garth has written a great book. Garth always writes great war stories. Like they're really great things. And I think it's an unusual job. A kind of 4 issues at 40 pages per issue. You've got to. I mean, it's a tough ask, I think, for someone to kind of go buy the first one, the second one, the third one, the fourth one. But you're buying a graphic novel in 4 chapters is what you're doing, really. Even more so than if it was a 4-issue miniseries. That's a novella, but this is a graphic novel, just in 4 little digestible chunks. And I'm still drawing it. I should get it finished before the deadline.
I'm sure you will, especially if your editor's watching, right? I mean,
yeah, no. Well, I'm about halfway through the final issue. I've penciled half of it, so I've started inks on that now. So that's just a matter of me just sitting down and inking the thing, and that's easy enough. So I know this is the downhill bit. This is the bit I really like, where you're kind of I've crested it, and I'm kind of now on the slope downwards, and this is just kind of finishing off and making sure we land the ending. So
not to dwell for too long on reference, but in looking at some of the research and some of the stuff you would have had to look at for this book, once you get to the kind of more visceral side of things, does that become emotionally difficult? Because
well, I avoid it. I don't see any particular benefit in looking that stuff up.
Right.
I think what I'm trying to get the costume's the wrong word. I'm trying to get the equipment right and the uniforms right, and you can do that with illustrations, and you can do that with photographs. I'm not particularly interested in seeing some of the and I can't remember if it happens in the first issue or the second issue. There's some pretty savage stuff that happens because it was a conflict that was really markedly savage. It was people with bayonets, and there was jungle fighting essentially involves getting in there with a bayonet. It's not a pleasant. There's the jungle's in the way for a start, so you're not going to pick people off across a battlefield. You're going to get in there and get your hands dirty. And this, I mean, a genuine samurai swords, genuine Gurkhas with the kukri blades, and the British Army with their bayonets and stuff. It was savage, and there is a lot of kind of visceral moments in it. But I don't connect to that when I'm even drawing it. I don't look at photos like that. I don't think it serves me any use whatsoever. I'm not that kind of artist either. I'm not really the sort of artist that you'd look at and go, "Oh, I feel a bit physically ill." I want the savagery to feel savage, and I want that to work. But at the same time, I'm not interested in making you throw up. I'm not. That's
Well,
not.
because the reason, part of the reason I ask is that Garth is not known for being a writer who holds back in,
No,
like,
he
I
doesn't.
mean,
And
in some of his
then
Punisher stuff. I recently reread his Punisher run just a couple of years back. I think as the first or second TV show was sort of hitting, and just for my own kind of benefit, I read his Punisher run, and there were times, I don't know if it's just as I've gotten older and more mellow. I like to think I'm more mellow as I've got older, but there were a couple of bits where I was like, this is pretty nasty, horrible stuff, and I don't know if I want to, not because of the quality of the writing, because the quality of the writing is
no,
magnificent,
I understand.
as is the quality of the art in this.
When I had kids, my threshold for what I could stomach on TV suddenly fell through the floor. It was like,
okay.
I can't. There's children in danger. I'm not watching this.
Yeah,
I don't care if it's Bambi. I refuse to watch it. It's not good. Yeah. So I understand completely. I think, when I'm doing the research, I'm genuinely looking for photos that would be useful reference photos. I'm not looking for viscera and gore. I'm not looking for any of that stuff, and I generally don't find it. So my search terms are like the webbing on military uniforms of World War II. It's that kind of innocuous thing. I think that those kind of reference photos are probably out there. Maybe if I'd looked at them, I'd have been better at delivering those kind of images. I don't know. But at the same time, Garth definitely sent me an email saying, look, this isn't maybe like other books we've done. You can let go there, and you can really go there if you want to. And I'm like, well, I don't really want to. It's just not in me. It's just not the sort of person I am.
That is perfectly fair. I think there is a sort of tendency sometimes in art to lean towards the barbarism of it, and I don't think it's necessarily better for that.
I think it's a personality thing. I don't, when I'm drawing kind of more gruesome stuff, I'm not really connecting to it this is a real person with real viscera coming out of them. It's like, oh, there's little scribbly lines that, I wonder if I do a scribbly line like that, would that look like an organ? Maybe, if I did a bit, this looks a bit like a rib cage, and that looks like a bit of gore. I'm like, cool. I'm not, there's no part of my brain going, Jesus, I've just done something horrible to a person. That's, so I think though, when you're reading the story and you're invested in the characters and those moments come up, then I think and hope you feel it, because I'm not, I don't think, I don't want to speak to Garth's other work, which sometimes does lean on the gore for humor or whatever, but when it turns up in the war stuff, it's almost always making a point. It's never
absolutely. Okay.
It's never there just for the purpose of being there. It's almost like on the things I've done with Garth, where something awful happens to someone, there's a reason for it, and sometimes that's about giving characters motivation. Sometimes it's about showing characters that kind of going, well, war is just war, isn't it? It's a jolly hockey sticks kind of game, and then you see the the terrible things that war actually does. It's quite a moral way of dealing with it, I think. And so I'm not, so I think what I'm saying is, it doesn't impact me because I'm not looking for those kinds of images anyway. And then whenever I do draw that kind of stuff, it's more of an intellectual exercise than it is a real, I'm thinking of, I'm not on the verge of throwing up every time I'm drawing that stuff, because to me, these are just noodly little lines, because I've disconnected my brain from the storytelling. I'm not as invested in the drawn shape of a person isn't a person. It's not, even whenever it's someone that I've drawn for a while, I'm not thinking, oh, well, poor old Jimmy's getting it there. Oh no, poor old Jimmy, what am I going to do? I haven't thought like that. It's just like, all right, now this happens to him. So I do think the experience of reading it though should be different than the experience of drawing it. I think, and I think, if you come across, and there's some moments where things are happening where the battle has kind of essentially turned into a melee Melee, is that the right way of saying that?
Yeah,
Melee.
Melee.
It's turned
Melee,
into
is it?
melee. It's turned into let's call it a sword fight. It's turned into a sword fight. It's turned into an all-out savage battle between blades and close combat, and at that point, in the immortal words of Patrick Stewart, you see everything. You see it all. You see it all, like everything. But sorry, I use humor as a defense mechanism.
I'm laughing because, funny enough, I put that meme up today on the website, not the meme, but the clip on the Twitter, because I was saying I hope this iconic scene appears in Doctor Strange.
See all of it. You see all of it. So yeah, I mean, but I do think no, it's fine. It's fine.
We've lost it now.
I've set the tone. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I do think it's not like, for example, I'm a different artist than Simon Bisley, and Bisley's art can be both beautiful and grotesque, and the grotesque can make me go ugh. And I don't know if it's just because I look at my own art differently, or whether it's because my art has a different flavor to it. I do think I can draw that stuff out when I need to, but I hope the characters, you feel warmth to them, so that when even a small moment like that goes quite a long way.
Right.
So and it's all about the story. It's not for the sake of it. It's just about the story. And I say those moments where battle does rage, it's not, we don't linger on it for any longer than we necessarily need to, but at the same time we give it the space that you need for it to have an impact. It almost sounded like I knew what I was talking about.
No, absolutely. I'm sure you do. And I'm sure you know a lot more than me. So that's when Garth comes in and says to you, "Okay, I've got this idea." Does he bring you a completed 4 issues at that point? Or is that when you hear about it? Or do you hear about it when it's still in the kind of early stages?
Yeah, usually, I mean, I think a lot of these stories for Garth are ruminating for a long time. I don't think, it feels like, I might be wrong, I mean, I probably am wrong, but it feels like for Garth, it's a matter of sitting down, just typing it up, and there you go. So, this story, I think we were coming towards the tail end of doing String Bags, and he said, "Look, I have another thing coming up. Are you interested in doing it? It's about the Chindits." And I said, "Yeah, of course I am. I'm always going to say yes." It's always going to be good with Garth. It's always going to be a book that you can stand over and say, "I'm actually kind of proud that I did that book. I'm proud of that book." I mean, I've done books that are great fun, and I don't regret. There's not a single job I think I've ever done where I go, "Oh, I wish I hadn't done that." But there are jobs where I stand over and go, "I'm really proud of doing that." Just proud of the kind of story it is, and that's almost every single one of Garth's books. I think that I've done have been books where I'd stand over and go, "Really proud of having done that." So yeah, it's an instant I'm in, and so I think COVID had kind of, I can't remember. I think we were due to start it in November and then didn't start it until April, January, February, something like that. And usually when Garth says, "I'll have the first script for you in this month," that's when you'll get it. That one was delayed, I think, COVID reasons. I can't remember. It was a long time ago. But then whenever the first script arrived, the next one came like a couple of weeks later and a couple of weeks later and a couple of weeks later. So the funny thing to me is always, like, I've been drawing this for most of a year and Garth is sitting there going, "I finished this like a year ago. Why are you still bothering me, asking me questions and sending me artwork? I finished this yonks ago. This is well out of my head." It always amazes me when I send him a page and it's like, it has been at this stage 9 months since he even looked at the script, and he's going to go, "That figure on page 3, panel 2, you have him doing this," when in fact he should be going like that, which is what I wrote in the original script. And you're going, how does he even remember? How at this stage I could be making stuff up and he should be going, whatever, I've forgotten, but he doesn't. He seems, it latches in there. So, which is probably what's helped him write the war stuff. I think he's got like a vice-like brain. It remembers everything. Anything that goes in there stays in there.
And presumably does he come to you with a publisher attached, or
Yeah,
does he come to
generally.
you and then it's like, can you do some early stuff,
No,
and we go to a
ge
publisher?
generally, no, I mean, certainly the war stuff that I've done the past few times, it's, so I think we did, with the first war thing with Happy Valley, and he had a publisher, and they'd already done a few books, and he asked me to do one of the books in it. Then I think there was another gig which I filed up, and it was with another publisher, and I mistimed everything. I didn't get the pages done, so that was the end of that career path for a while, and then the World of Tanks stuff was already being published, and Carlos Esquerra was drawing it at the time, and Carlos's mother had taken ill, and Carlos had to stop drawing it, and they needed another artist, and Garth came to me because we'd done some more stuff before, and because, as I recall, he said that he felt he wanted to go from a 2000 AD artist to another 2000 AD artist,
Right.
and he knew I could do that, so I did that. Then I did another World of Tanks with him. And then he asked about String Bags, which was with the publisher already. And this was also with Aftershock already. So generally with the war stuff, I think what happens, I mean, I don't know, but I think what happens is publishers go to Garth and say, Garth, we'd love to publish something by you. And Garth goes, well, I've got like 30 war story ideas sitting here waiting to go. And they go, yeah, okay, we'll do one of those then. And it's just a matter of finding an artist. Generally on the war stuff, it's always been with a publisher already. So I mean, that means all I have to do is start coming in and start doing the work, which is nice.
And there seems to be like this strong, you say there's a strong community in Ireland of comic writers and artists. I mean, you've got Garth there and yourself. I know
Garth's in
you've done some work with. Is he based out? I always thought he was.
No, Garth's lived in New York for like the past 20 years or something. Garth's an American citizen, as a matter of fact. Weird. I mean, the odd thing is Garth and I are about. I think there's a week difference between our birthdays.
Right.
I think he's. So I'm like literally one and a half weeks or something between us in terms of age. I think I'm the older by about a week and a half, and he comes from an area of Northern Ireland, which is not. It's on the outside. I'm in Belfast, which Belfast is the capital city of Northern Ireland, if you can call it a capital city. It's capital with a small c because it's a small place. And Garth, I think, is from Hollywood or somewhere, which is kind of 30 minutes down the road from where I am, and I'm right in the heart of the city centre. So it's the other side of where he is, but it's the heart of the city centre. So we kind of have a shared upbringing, but we didn't really meet or anything until John McRae and his friend Fred Collier opened a comic shop. And John's another artist. I mean, he's from here, but he lives in Birmingham. He's lived in Birmingham for God knows how long. So there's a few artists here now, but it's not, there's not the. I think there's a community in the sense that if we all see each other, it's like, we're from the same place, yay!
But and also, I'm thinking of people like Declan Shalvey. You've just worked with. I mean,
I actually think there's probably a stronger, there's a stronger Southern Irish comic community, which I used to joke with people that the reason Northern Irish, that there isn't the same community in Northern Ireland is because we're kind of slightly suspicious in Northern Ireland of more than 3 people meeting up in a place at any one time. It's like, I don't know about that guy. Do you see his bag? It's a bit big, isn't it? Did you hear a ticking noise? Anyway, there's that. So there's that, right? And
I'm gonna get in so much trouble for this.
Hi, who? They can threaten me. I'm from here. So whereas in the south there seems to be a much kind of closer community, which I actually suspect it comes from one particular generation of like the generation that Declan came up in, and Stephen Mooney and Nick Roach, and Bob Byrne all seem to have appeared at around the same time. And they all helped each other, and that was great. And they kind of, for a while, and still do. I think it was really. I feel like I'm a sort of an adopted dad or an adopted son. Some sort of adopted older sibling who doesn't really quite understand how he's become adopted, but is still part of that. So when there's emails going back and forth, I'll be included. If there's a meal or something, I'll be included. But it definitely feels like the the focus point of that would have been Declan and Stephen Mooney and Stephen Thompson's another guy as well from there, and it feels like there maybe there's that kind of group in there, but it's hard to tell. I think for a long time I would have said in Northern Ireland there was maybe me. I was the only professional comic creator in Northern Ireland for quite the longest time, and frankly I'm a bit put out that I'm not anymore. And it was nice. It was like I didn't have many cards to my
taking my fame.
You're taking my one thing. My one thing in Northern Ireland was being the only comic artist in Northern Ireland. There's a handful of us, but we don't see each other. We don't know each other. We'd say
I'm
hello.
the only comic creator in the village.
Yeah, we'd say hello. I mean, there's a few writers and a few other artists, but the industry's small and it's very hard to, like the comics industry is a small industry, so it's if you get 6 people in one kind of island together, then everyone else is going to look at it and go, cool, look, there's a whole community over there. Sort of
but there's a lot of there seems to be a lot of really nice kind of camaraderie where you guys are kind of literally looking out for each other and giving each other work, which I think is important as some creators kind of rise and have a success. I mean, but you see this in people like Ranvi. He worked with other Indian creators. I think there's a lot of there's something in that that's good. Like I think it's a good thing.
I suspect there's untapped potential. Like every place has a bunch of creators that could be working in the industry, but just haven't had that opportunity. And then if one person does break in, the likelihood is they know those other people, because they've come up with them or they've worked with them before in the small press or whatever. I mean, the odd thing for me was because Northern Ireland Northern Ireland is a small place, and it always felt to me that my career path would have lay with going to England and doing something. I always wanted to do stuff for 2000 AD, so my focus was always what's happening in England. And right. It was never what's happening in Ireland. It's always what's happening in England. In the south of Ireland, Declan, those guys, their focus was always on the American industry, and how do we get the American? How do we break in the States? And so there was, that was always a kind of slightly different pull, and it meant that I think that and we are all friendly with each other, and you reach a certain level in your abilities where you go, you know what, you could do that job as easy as like 100, a dozen other people. So, and I know you, and you're not a tosser, so why would I not? I mean, Garth, for example, I think is very loyal to people that he works with, and if we will get to work together, I'm sure. On assuming I don't file up in some terrible way by saying something awful on this podcast, for example. But he will tend to kind of pull you in for work. I mean, I feel like as long as Garth's interested in doing war stories, if I'm equally interested in drawing war stories, there'll be more war stories in my future. I am starting to reach a point where I do with every war book where I go, I cannot draw another war book after this. Dear God, no more war. I cannot do it. Just cannot do it. And which is what happened after String Bags finished. It was like I emailed Garth, said, Garth, been great. I would love to do some more stuff with you. Cannot do another war book for at least a year. Just cannot do it. And then I think it was about 4 months later, and Rob Williams emailed me say Battle 2080 we're doing a Battle special. Did I want to do an 8-page war book? I went, yeah. God damn it. And this one's set in the water. It's like, oh, I get to draw waves. I'll get to learn how to draw waves. That'll be good fun.
When you take that on, are you then immediately kicking yourself sort of 3 weeks in?
No, because it is a different thing. I mean, that's the thing. Right. Every war book has been a different conflict. It's been the thing with the war stuff, I think, is that for example in this book, I mean, we're following the same 3 guys more or less over the course of 170 pages. They don't change their clothes. They're constantly wearing that uniform, and they're surrounded by other people in uniform, and they're constantly in the jungle. And so you've got you're drawn, and then you're trying to find ways to stop that being repetitive, and then your brain comes out of it, and you go, right, well, that was a job and a half. No more of that, please, never again. And if Garth goes, look, I've got another word, but you go, is it jungle? And he goes, no, it's not jungle. And you go, okay, then I'll maybe think about it.
Right.
What
right.
is it? I mean, I definitely like a guy who posted on, a friend of mine posted on Twitter saying, look at these lovely planes that I've done in what do you call it, in Lion and the Eagle. And I kind of, this genuinely when Garth asked me to do this, I went, what's it about? And he says, Chinda, it's jungle warfare. And I genuinely thought, no tanks, no planes, no buildings, no roads, no, everything's natural. There's nothing man-made. Yes, like the first few scenes are the staging parts of getting the Chindits into the Burmese jungle. And I didn't know anything about this when I started, but a little known to me, it was like 100, it's 100 Dakota C-47 planes, each of them with 20 soldiers, each of them with 3 or 4 mules. So I'm drawing mules and people and literally hundreds of airplanes.
The poor guy getting kicked in the nuts by a mule was a lovely touch, by the way.
The really funny thing is, I mean, Garth did email me to say, look, just want to apologize for how many mules you'll end up having to draw on this. I went, okay, thanks. Like the planes are the planes. I think Garth has got it in his head that I actually really enjoy drawing planes, and it's like to a point, you know.
Well, one day I'm sure you'll get to draw a 747 or.
Well, I mean, I cheat. Like, let's be honest with you, I cheat. I mean, the planes I draw are generally all 3D models that I sort of steadily building an air fleet of 3D model airplanes and things, and I'll use those because there's no. You don't get rewarded for getting these things accurate. You know, you get punished for getting them wrong. You don't get rewarded for getting them right. And I can do far more with a 3D model, which I'll draw over it. It's not like in the early days when I did Happy Valley, the main vehicle in that was a Wellington bomber. And so I built one out of an Airfix model, kind of big Wellington bomber, and I painted it black with white highlights. The white highlights were in everywhere that you would see a bit of outlining or something. And then what I would do is I'd photograph it against an all white background, and then I'd take it into the computer and I'd just invert the colors, and I've got a line drawn of an airplane, and I would just trace over.
Brilliant.
So you know, it was easier, faster, allowed me to do far more with it.
Because it sounds labor intensive initially, but then the amount of labor it saves you.
I mean, you've got to build the bloody model first of all, and it is.
Oh, you had fun doing that. Come on.
But the thing is that when you're done with it, then you've got this. You can visualize it in every dimension. You know, you're looking at it from different angles. You can hold it up to your eye. You know, you can go, oh, this would be an interesting shot if I do this. By the end of the book was 3 issues, 20 pages, so 60 pages. But by about 40, 45 pages in, I could draw the plane without reference anymore. You know, because I'd just been drawing it so often. Whereas this one, I'm like drawing 100 airplanes, getting the perspective exactly right. Just I wouldn't say it's impossible. It's just foolishly labor intensive. You know, whereas I can bang a 3D thing on there, have a look, and convert that to a kind of line drawing in Clip Studio, which is the program I use, and then I'll kind of redraw. Basically, I'm drawing over every single vehicle and just giving it texture, giving it weight, giving it age, and just making it look better, making it look more in tune with the artwork. But that, again, it's one of those things where the story isn't about 100 planes. It's not cars. It's not the movie Cars. It's not about cars. It's not about planes. It's about the people and what happens to them, and isn't war terrible, which is the catch-all term for almost any war comic. Isn't war terrible?
Well, not for Garth. I'm sure he's built a sort of cottage industry.
No, I mean, Garth loves it. I mean, we're same age, same generation. We both grew up on more or less the same sorts of materials. I did an interview recently, actually, where they were asking about this. And Garth grew up with things like Battle, and I grew up with Warlord. So I don't know. I'm sure you're familiar with both of them. I don't know.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah. So but for anyone who's not, Warlord and Battle are both war comics. but the primary difference in them is that Battle was a comic for people who had been punched in the face and would get up and stand their ground and go, hit me again. Warlord was a comic for people who would go, please don't hit me, and then run away. So Warlord was kind of, I mean, the example I use.
I don't doubt that they'll be using those as slogans for the inevitable reboots.
Well, I mean, I like the comparison I always make with Battle and Warlord is no use to anyone younger than me, but it's like it was the difference between Tiswas and Magpie,
Right.
or the Beano
Okay,
and the Dandy. It's like one is a gritty for working class kids, and the other one is a kind of, well, isn't war awful? It wasn't war awful for the working class. And that's unfortunately what Warlord was, but I loved Warlord, you know. So
Right.
Warlord, like its main character, was Lord Peter Flint, who was a coward who had been given a white flower for, or a white what's the word, feather for cowardice, but he was actually a secret agent all the time, so he was off being James Bond. Whereas in a Battle, it was Charlie's War, about a working class boy who was stuck in the worst aspects of World War One. That's the kind of difference, you know. So I think Garth comes from the Battle tradition. I come from the Warlord tradition, and there's a certain amount of crossover. But at the same time, it's like, you know, I want my heroes to resolve, and I want everything nice to be nice in the end, and for everyone to go afterwards. Well, war was a jolly bad inconvenience, wasn't it? Whereas the other one, the Battle one, is everyone's dead and no one can talk about what the war was like afterwards. Yeah.
And yet the thing is, they both sound amazing because you are getting those two completely different viewpoints.
Yeah, I mean, they were on the shelves at the same time. I think at that time, British comics had this tendency to kind of, you would find newsagents that were allied to one publisher or another. They get all their material. It's almost like when you go to a shop now, they either got Coke or they've got Pepsi. One thing or the other. It's never both. You know, you'll find, or not shops, but restaurants and things, it's never both, because they've locked them up. You know, and you find that with the comics publishers of the time, is they would put out so many titles that they'd knock the other titles off the shelf, and you'd have shops like 9 local newsagents sold Warlords. It didn't sell Battle. You know,
right.
And you had to go to a different newsagents to get Battle because it was a different publisher. So that just seemed to be the way it was.
It must have been great having this army of children sort of between them, just keeping news agents going by.
Yeah, well, I mean, don't forget, this is Northern Ireland, where you don't want to be walking around with a British comic about British soldiers in the 80s, you know, in the 70s and 80s. I mean, I genuinely, like, I'd be like 7 or 8 years old playing in a field, not a field. So we're like, again, Belfast, but Belfast in the 70s looked like post-London after the Blitz. There was lots of buildings knocked down. No, it was a very poor, not an awful lot of money, but I don't actually live that far from where I used to live now. But the area that I used to play in was essentially, had at one point been a car park, I think. It was like filled with stones. It had been a place for people to park their cars, for a factory that had long since been, you know, kind of not demolished, but sort of gone to rot. And I used to play in there with my best mate, and we would play soldiers there. We'd play World War II soldiers, 2 Catholic boys playing World War II soldiers. And then, like, down from that, then was a big field where one day I was stood kind of, you know, I think I was on my own, because it wasn't too far from my house. It's down there on my own. The helicopter landed with soldiers in it, and the soldiers were all getting out, and the British soldiers were getting out, and they were looking through their guns, and they were aiming and looking around. And I was just going, oh my God, this is amazing. Catholic, remember? This is amazing. This is incredible. And the soldier let me look through his gun sight. I was like, oh, this is great. Yeah. So anyway.
Amazing. Oh my God. I can't imagine what it must have been like growing up in that sort of environment, though.
I mean, it was like, it's one of those things. It's a thing that that slightly annoys me about you know, people saying, you know, I hate to talk about COVID, but we'll talk about a little bit about COVID. As kids, shouldn't have kids wearing masks. It's awful. I'm kind of going, did you see what it was like for people growing up in the 80s in Northern Ireland? Did you see? A mask is nothing. I swear to God, when we used to go down to the city centre, the main shopping precinct in Northern Ireland, you get your bag searched. and you'd have to be separate. The men would get searched in one section, the women would get searched in another. Your mum would have to go to one bit, and you'd have to go to another, and be searched as you were going into the town, and on your way out again. So I mean, it was. But the thing is, you got used to it. This became the normal. When I was like 8 or 9 years old, that was normal. And when my cousin came over, she was about, I think, this would be 83 or something. She was about 13. I'd never seen armed police before. And, Northern Ireland, we've always had armed. I don't ever remember the police not being armed, but she'd never seen armed police before, or even soldiers with guns on the streets. And she was in a car, and we were driving along. I was in the back with her, and we saw a patrol light, and she bricked it. She dived under the chair, going, "Oh my God, they've got guns!" And I'm going, "Yeah, of course they're police. What do you expect?" I remember the first time I went to England, looking at the police that didn't have guns in the airport. It's all changed now, of course, but seeing police with no guns and thinking, "Well, they look really weird. What happens if somebody tries to shoot them? What are they going to do? They don't even have a gun. This is ridiculous." You get used to different things, and it doesn't become, you're not going, "This is weird," because you're so used to it being the normal,
Absolutely. I mean, I remember equating in the last couple of years, the feeling of everything that's been going on, the pandemic, COVID, as being a bit like growing up in the 80s with the sort of omnipresent threat of nuclear war. And it was just like, look,
genuinely, when I was 13 or 14, so 83, 84, my recurring fantasy was that me and my family would live in an underground bunker with like this elaborate setup where I had bunk bed. I don't know why I'd have bunk beds in a fantasy, but I had bunk beds. My brother being in a bed below me. We'd have TVs at the end of our bed. This is part of the big fantasy. TVs at the end of our bed, and also this massive VHS library. They took up nearly more of the bunker than this living quarters. They would have every TV series we ever wanted to watch. Netflix. Basically, I was dreaming I had Netflix and lived in a room I couldn't escape from, which is fundamentally what I do now.
Yeah.
So
that is it. And I mean, it has been it's been an interesting period. It's I think it's been good for people's anxiety, including mine, and I'm sure.
Yeah, well, I mean,
yours.
Yes, everyone. It's treated everyone differently, and I think the odd thing will be some people will have found it very difficult, which is completely understandable, and some people will have found it weirdly reassuring, and a kind of, "Oh well, this is the worst that can happen, and it's not that bad, really." And I think some people are going to have difficulty moving to the next stage, which will be coming out of that, and suddenly everyone's, "Hey, I haven't seen a human for a long time." It's like, "Well, don't touch me." Well, you're one of those free hug guys. We don't do that no more. Stop it. Stop.
So we've got about 12 minutes left.
People should be kinder.
Yes,
that's what I'm
absolutely. I mean, to themselves and to others, I think it has been a strange period, and certainly.
Look how many of my books we didn't cover.
Well, funny enough, we've got 12 minutes left, so we can just talk briefly about. You do have some great other work sort of out now and coming. Yeah. We were talking about Declan and John McCrae earlier. Obviously, with Declan, you've got an issue of Time Before Time. I've just read the first volume of that, and and really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's great
so
fun.
I'm looking forward to this next sort of phase.
Yeah. I think Tom Palmer is the artist on it. He's a fantastic artist, and his art style's really developed over the course of it. And he's got this kind of brilliant it's like, it reminds me a lot of the guy who did the Tron animated series. It's got this very distinctly kind of slightly elongated but very stylish looking, and that's not what I am, but I was asked to do a fill-in, and
I mean, he kind of sits in between sort of, for me, Mignola, Guy Davis, Paul Grist, that sort of kind of wave, and yours is an entirely kind of much, and I'm not saying to the benefit or
it's okay to be placed in a different bracket without feeling it's better or worse.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Sorry, and that is what I did want to try and get across. Thank you for putting that a lot more eloquently than I was going to mumble my way through. But it's a smoother style.
Yeah.
But you are telling a very different story
Well, yeah,
than the ones they
I'm
normally
on
tell in the
issue
book, right?
12, which I think is out in May, and essentially the book does, it's got story arcs, and then it's got these little fill-in issues between those arcs, which kind of cover ground that maybe aren't essential to the arc, but at the same time fill out the world a little bit. So I drew it a while ago, so I've half forgotten the character names, so forgive me. But the female cop, the FBI
Right.
cop, FBI agent who goes off on this big adventure, um, is she's left behind a partner, and the question is, why hasn't this partner started investigating where she's gone? And that's what my little issue deals with. And I've kind of, because of Tom's artwork, I kind of thought, well, I want to try and do something slightly out of my normal thing. So I kind of leaned a bit heavier on heavy, shadowy noir. So
Okay.
I hope it works. But it's a one-off complete story, and in fact, you could nearly read it on its own without reading any of the other stuff. It's a nice little kind of story about that world that they're in, and the ramifications of time travel and what it means for the gangsters and what they can do with it.
What one and done issues are becoming something of a lost art. They seem, I mean, actually, they seem to be coming back now. But there was a while there when it was just like, so much continuity to get through, and you just couldn't do it. But I'm glad to hear that you're doing this sort of single.
Well, that is. I mean, they haven't asked me to do any more, so I don't know if I've offended anyone. But
not yet. Not yet.
They're
only issue 10. You did issue 12. I mean, give it some time.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it was honestly, they'd asked me to do that a while ago, and I kind of said yes. But at the time, so I mean, we could probably talk about Soul Plumber is the other thing I've got out at the moment.
Yeah.
Soul Plumber issue 5, I think, is out this week, and it is a sort of shared art duties between me and John McCrae. John wasn't well when he started Soul Plumber, and then I think he got long COVID, or I don't know if he had COVID and then got long COVID, or just went straight to long COVID. But it was, it didn't leave him very particularly well. I mean, it's hard to describe how ill you are with long COVID, because it's not like you're physically ill. It's more of a kind of bone tiredness seems to be the thing. It's a kind of just no energy to do anything really, but not being ill. Do you know what I mean? That's it. So I mean, as John I mean, I've talked to John. Sometimes I've talked to him and he's feeling great, and then sometimes I'll talk to him. It's like, Jesus, man, go to bed and sleep for the next 4 days because you sound terrible. But so, and it hasn't affected the quality of his work. It's still, I mean, it's top notch. But it has affected just him being able to sit down and kind of think about. I mean, when you're drawing comics, you're essentially doing two things. One is problem solving. You're sitting down and trying to go, how do I tell the story that the writer has asked? So the writer's told me a story, and now I've got to tell it to the readers. How do I do that? How do I, give you an angle on this story that you can see the things that the writer wants you to see, while at the same time making it look interesting and making sure that it follows on and leads on to the next thing without feeling a bit like a jolt, So it's a lot of problem solving. There's a lot of thinking goes on into it, but that's at the pencils layout stage. And so John had asked me if I could do some layouts from the second issue. I did 2 pages of pencil in the first one, and then he asked me if I could do some layouts. In the second one, I think I did half of it. By the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, I pretty much was doing all the layouts. I said prior to recording, I'd said to you that John will do the inks on finishes on my layouts, and I look at those finishes and go, wow, that's like a really great John McCrae page. Where is my stuff? Where's my drawings gone? They don't seem to be there anymore. But it's like a weird, vague memory, like a false memory. Like you're looking at it going, I vaguely remember drawing something like this, but it wasn't as good as this. And then you look at the pencils and go, no, it's all there. But John's he's just dressed it up so much nicer than what I was doing. So, I mean, the pages that John's finished, I think, look amazing. Pages I finished look okay. Yeah, they look all right. But I'm trying to kind of, I don't want to be too jarring. So the art style I've used on Time Before Time is quite black ink, heavy dark shadows and so on. Whereas John's stuff has got these kind of bubbly fill in, lots of lines, kind of scratchy, McMahon kind of esque fill-in line type stuff going on. So I've got a lot more of that in it, which means that it's not as jarring for a reader, I think, to go from John's pages to my pages. And we've sometimes tried, like, there's a sequence in the last issue coming up where there are two events happening concurrently, and the story jumps between the two of them, and John's handling the outdoor stuff and I'm handling the indoor stuff. So it works,
Right.
it works reasonably well, I think. But I don't think it's too. I actually think it's a great. I mean, it's Soul Plumber is a mad comic. It's the maddest thing I've ever read. It's by these guys that do a podcast called The Last Podcast on the Left. I wasn't familiar with it, but it does conspiracy theory type stuff. It does. So DC asked them to do a comic, and they kind of pitched this kind of. It's very like a Garth Ennis comic, but without that nasty edge. When Garth does stuff about religion, he can introduce a very nasty edge to it, which is not maybe nasty is the wrong word, but it's like a jab to the heart of the religion. It's a real attack because you can tell that that's a thing he really vehemently despises. Whereas this is much more sort of playful with it. It's kind of it's a funny, strange comic. I'm sure it'll be collected. So if you've missed the first 4 or 5 issues, don't worry about it. I'm sure there'll be a collection.
I have unfortunately,
DC horror.
Not had the chance.
That's
to.
All right.
I've obviously seen it on the shelf, but it's not something I've had the chance to look at yet. But I do look forward to taking a look at the
DC horror. And I'll be honest with you. I said this before. I don't think it's done my reputation with DC any harm whatsoever because I've been able to come in, help John out on the deadlines, get this thing. I don't think we've missed any dates on it, and that's despite John being ill and me coming in. I mean, I've penciled and inked the bits that I've done on that between issues 3 and 4 of Lion and the Eagle, and I've also done an issue of Time Before Time in that time. So, like, there was a 1 month there where I've drawn 3 different comics. Mental.
God, you must be exhausted. But
I like doing that. I like hopping between. It's much easier to be busy than it is to be not busy.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
Mm.
Well, I'm glad to see so much of your work out there, PJ, and I'm really glad you could find time to talk to us today. It has been entertaining and enthusing and enlightening.
And we didn't even talk about the story I wrote for 2000 AD.
Oh no! Quick, do you want to do it? We've got 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Go on.
Last week was my I wrote a story for 2000 AD, a terror tale, 4-page terror tale, which seemed to have gone down quite well. So I've got about half a dozen other ideas that I've got to sit and kind of finish if I ever want to do more writing.
Right.
But the problem is always like, I know so many good writers, and like Garth goes, I've got a gig here. Do you want it? Am I going to go? Actually, Garth, I think you'll find I'm quite a good accomplished writer on my own. So no, thank you. I'm not going to do that. That'd be mad. So I'm definitely going to go, yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, I'll have that. And the writers I work with on 2000 AD are great as well. I've been very lucky, and the writers I've worked with have always been good. But the thing I've always found is that writers seem to have slightly more control over their own destiny when it comes to comics. I mean, I don't want to paint that this is any of it's easy. None of it's easy. But as a writer, as an artist, I'm always coming in after an editor said yes. I like an editor's already gone, yeah, I want that, and we'll get PJ to do it. So I'm always kind of slightly on the behind step. Whereas the story I wrote was a horror story because I wanted to draw a horror story. I just thought this would be a fun thing to do. And so I wrote something for me to draw, which was unlike anything else I've been drawing. So I did that while I was drawing I've been crazy. It is about plants. But it was a horror story, and I wanted to draw a kind of gothic-y, Cthulhu-esque horror, body horror type thing. And I pitched an idea to 2000 AD, and they went, yeah, that's got something in it.
And was that a single issue story?
Yeah, it's the 2000 AD do Future Shocks and Terror Tales that are basically 4 pages stories. The Future Shocks have a twist in their tale. The Terror Tales are basically horror, so they can be much more open-ended. They can be horror, but I'd been reading a lot of Junji Ito, and because of that, I'd kind of come to the idea that I quite like unsettling horror that leaves you kind of that is slightly dreamlike in some ways, but is also sort of
incredibly, for being so unsettling. I can tell you, working in a shop that sells Ito stuff, it flies off the shelf.
Yeah, I'd say
You cannot stock enough of it, you know.
Yeah. And my 13-year-old introduced me to it, and you know,
was that a bit worrying?
No, I mean, like we're quite wishy-washy liberal parents. Our kids, like my kids, don't swear in front of me. You know, if they do swear, it's never in front of me. They're quite good kids. You know, and we're quite sort of like, if my son is reading horror stuff, that's fine. He's reading, isn't he? I mean, that's going to stimulate him in a way that other stuff isn't doing. And he's been, like Thomas, who's 13, is writing and drawing. At this point, he's written and drawn about 300 or 400 pages of comics on his own.
Amazing.
You know, incredible. All I've done is help him assemble them into books on Amazon. But like he's had more stuff published than I had by the age of 30. He's done at the age of 13.
Well, you know, he's going to be paying for your dotage. That's the important thing to take away from that.
I hope never to enter my dotage, which is optimistic, but
I'm sure you won't. But like the work in Lion and the Eagle is fantastic. So there it is from Aftershock Comics. Lion and the Eagle. Issue 1 is out right now. So we're actually recording this on Wednesday. You should be seeing it sometime Wednesday evening, and again, hopefully seeing it after that as well, because I'd love if more people watch this. But do go and get it. It's available from all good comic shops now. I got mine at Gosh Comics, which you can find in central London. I'm sure it's going to be available everywhere. I've certainly seen it racked on a few other comic shops today. So yeah, do go and pick that up. Line
everywhere that has an oversized comic shelf, you'll find it.
I did see it racked with the magazines in one store today.
Wouldn't surprise me.
And I almost kind of went, do you not think you should have... But I stopped myself.
You know, it's funny because it is magazine sized. And like if you look at a modern magazine, it's not. It seems like it's an expensive book, but you look at the price of magazines now. You know, it's not. It's not even the price of a bookazine, which is those book magazine things, and it's that sort of size. So,
but it's fantastic stuff, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to getting the rest of the issues. PJ, thank you so much for giving me so much of your time today. It's been a genuine pleasure, and I hope we can do it again. And I know.
Oh, I'm always up for talking.
I know you want to talk more about it. I haven't noticed, but I know you do want to talk about more about that transition from being an artist into doing more writing now. And
yeah.
That is something I would like to broach with you at some stage. So hopefully we can get together again sometime soon.
Maybe if I find the time to sit and write the second one, then maybe.
So you can follow PJ on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle?
At Paul J. Holden.
Yeah, so you can follow him there, and I'm sure on Insta as well, and you'll be able to see some of his fantastic artwork. You can definitely see it in the Lion and the Eagle. You can follow us at The Comic Crush on Twitter and Insta, and we're also on Facebook. And you can check out our website, which has a web shop and a ton of articles as fast as I can write them, all about comics. But do check us out, and do think about subscribing to the Patreon to help keep us going. PJ, thank you so much for your time. Thank you to everyone who's listened in on the podcast and watched on the YouTube channel today. You've got the auspicious honor of being our first interview episode for 2022, PJ. So thank you.
There we go.
I think we've kicked off really well to have you on.
Yeah, follow that, everyone else. Please.
No, it's been great. Thank you so much for your time. Goodbye, everyone. Goodbye, PJ.
Cheerio. Bye.
See you.